Usually when we talk about the world around us, there's this expectation of permanence.
Right, like basic engineering.
Exactly. It's like engineering. You drop an apple, gravity pulls it to the floor, and, a physicist can just point to the math and say, there it is.
The rules just work.
Yeah, they just work. But imagine stepping outside tomorrow, dropping that same apple, and instead of falling, it hesitates.
Oh, yeah.
Like it just hovers for a fraction of a second before hitting the ground. And if you're noticing these tiny, impossible fractures in the world around you, I just want to say you're not alone.
No, absolutely not alone.
In today's deep dive, we're opening a massive stack of sources from a publication called The Parallel Observer. It was created by John Grant, the founder and CEO of InnovateXR.
Right, InnovateXR.
Yeah, InnovateXR. And our mission today is to explore this central, frankly, chilling premise. What if the reality you are experiencing right now, what these sources actually refer to as the Phoenix timeline, what if it's a simulation that is actively running out of memory?
It forces a complete paradigm shift.
Oh, completely.
Because what makes this stack of research so compelling isn't just the simulation hypothesis itself, Philosophers have debated that for decades.
Right, the whole brain in a vat thing.
Exactly. But it's the empirical, cross-disciplinary data they've compiled here. We are looking at identical systemic anomalies appearing simultaneously in global weather patterns, the highest levels of the legal system, cognitive health research, and even professional sports.
Which is wild.
It is. The system isn't just theoretical anymore. It is demonstrating measurable systemic stress.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because whether you treat this as a literal physical truth about our universe or, just an incredible thought experiment to understand modern chaos, looking through this lens completely changes the daily news.
It really does reframe everything.
So let's start with where the system is under the most strain. Because if you want to see how a simulated reality breaks, you have to look at what happens when the architecture experiences maximum traffic. And in our world, maximum traffic looks an awful lot like the 2026 World Cup.
Yes. When billions of human consciousnesses focus intensely on a single localized event in time and space, it creates an enormous bottleneck.
A massive bottleneck.
Think about the computational load required there to render the physics, the crowd dynamics, the, micro expressions of the players, all for a global, simultaneous audience.
Just staggering amounts of data.
Right. And the first piece of research from the Parallel Observer is titled The Atmosphere of Anxiety. It correlates that exact bottleneck with the record-breaking pollution levels recorded during the tournament.
See, this was the part that immediately made me think of old video games.
Oh, that's a good analogy, yeah.
Like, if you've ever played a massive multiplayer game online, you know what happens when too many players congregate in one single city square on the map.
The server starts lagging.
Exactly. The server lags, the framer drops. And to keep the entire game from crashing, the engine has to use visual tricks. It drops a heavy fog over the map.
Occlusion culling.
Right, developers call it occlusion culling. If you can't see the buildings in the distance, the graphics card just doesn't have to render them. So, are the researchers suggesting the smog at the World Cup was literally occlusion culling for human reality?
That is the exact mechanism being proposed, yes.
Wow.
From a rendering perspective, physical smog acts as a shroud. It drastically limits the draw distance of the environment.
So it hides the background.
Precisely. By obscuring the horizon and reducing the visual complexity of the background, whatever processing architecture governs the Phoenix timeline, well, it can reallocate memory to the stadium itself.
That is wild.
The pollution wasn't just an environmental failure, it was a systemic compensation tactic to handle the bandwidth.
Okay, but visual tricks only save so much processing power, right?
Right, which is why the system also had to simplify the physics of the event itself.
Which brings us to this fascinating statistical breakdown they did, called the 2026 World Cup Final, a statistical mirage or performance art.
The data there is deeply unsettling.
It really is. The analysts looked at the final match, and the results were mathematically too perfect to be the result of a chaotic physical world.
Right, because when you analyze the telemetry data from that final match, the player movements, the trajectory of the ball, the synchronization of heart rates among the athletes, the standard deviation drops to near zero.
Which shouldn't happen.
No, in a physical world governed by entropy, there should be randomness, a slip on the grass, a microvariance in a gust of wind.
A bad bounce.
Exactly. Instead, the data reflects deterministic trajectories, the match executed flawlessly, almost, algorithmically.
So if the server's crashing because billions of people are watching, it just removes the physics engine entirely and forces a pre-rendered cutscene to play out.
Yes, it removes the randomness because calculating chaos is mathematically expensive.
Right, just too much math.
It is highly efficient from a computational standpoint. Calculating true thermodynamic entropy for a chaotic system requires exponential processing power. By defaulting to a scripted buffer load cycle, the system bypasses the physics engine entirely.
It just plays the animation.
Exactly. It guarantees an outcome without having to calculate all the variables.
That is just, it's wild. The idea that the most thrilling, edge-of-your-seat moments in sports history might just be a reality server trying to keep from blue screening.
It's a sobering thought.
But temporary event lag is one thing, you know. A sports game only lasts a couple of hours. I want to shift to the environmental anomalies the sources bring up, because this is where we move from software struggling to keep up to the actual physics engine fundamentally breaking down.
The meteorological data, yes.
Right. The Parallel Observer has a piece titled The Midwest Deluge, Atmospheric Anomalies or Systemic Glitch. And they point out that these massive superstorms in the Midwest are behaving unnaturally. They are anchored over critical infrastructure.
Which is completely contrary to how meteorological events operate. They are fluid. They are pushed and pulled by atmospheric pressure, the jet stream thermodynamics.
They move.
Right. But the radar data on these Midwest superstorms shows them sitting perfectly stationary over specific power grids and communication hubs for days at a time.
Which is terrifying.
They are behaving less like natural weather systems and more like isolated stress tests. If you were a developer trying to test the resilience of a specific structural asset on a map, you would isolate the variable and apply sustained, localized pressure.
Like pointing a fire hose at a single brick to see when it cracks.
Precisely.
And the anomalies get even stranger. The sources highlight a data point coming out of Arizona that absolutely melted my brain.
Yeah.
Negative power consumption. I had to read that section 3 times.
Oh, the Arizona data. It violates the second law of thermodynamics entirely.
How is that even possible?
Well, energy can be transferred or transformed, but the smart grid data in localized pockets of Arizona showed homes drawing negative energy.
Like putting back in.
No, the meters were effectively running backward, not because they were generating solar power, but because energy was being actively deleted from the closed system.
Deleted. Just gone.
Ambient temperatures in these homes drop spontaneously without any cooling apparatus running.
Wait, let me stop you there, because here's where my mind just hits a wall.
Okay.
If the laws of physics are fundamentally breaking down, if we literally have localized energy deletion in Arizona and perfectly anchored storms in the Midwest, why aren't people panicking?
Right.
Like, if my living room suddenly defied the laws of thermodynamics, I would be screaming in the streets. The sources keep mentioning this concept of phantom stress. Is that just a fancy modern clinical term for the anxiety of living in a weird world?
Not quite. We have to differentiate between the biological hardware of the human body and the user interface of the conscious mind.
Okay, explain that.
Think about virtual reality sickness.
Oh, like when you get nauseous in a headset.
Exactly. Your eyes tell your brain you are moving, but your inner ear tells your body you are sitting still. The hardware detects a fundamental mismatch in the physics of the environment, and it triggers a physiological response nausea.
Okay, I track that.
Phantom stress is that exact mechanism scaled up to the existential level.
So my conscious mind is trying to play PR for reality. Like, it sees the impossible storm and tells me, oh, it's just a freak weather pattern, just to keep me from losing my mind.
Basically, yes. The conscious brain desperately wants a cohesive narrative. It will rationalize almost anything. But your cellular structure, your nervous system, it is deeply embedded in the base code of the environment.
So the body knows.
When energy is deleted from a room in Arizona, the conscious mind might overlook the chill, but the biological hardware inherently recognizes that the thermodynamic rules have failed.
Wow.
Phantom stress is the body detecting systemic failure before the conscious brain can articulate it. It's that profound primal dread you feel when a space looks normal, but your instincts scream that the geometry is wrong.
Your hardware is throwing up red flags because the physics engine is glitching.
Precisely.
Man, it is incredibly unsettling to think of my own nervous system as a background virus scanner that keeps finding corrupted files while I'm just trying to make breakfast.
It is a disturbing analogy, but a very accurate one.
So we've established that the external physical environment is showing cracks, and our bodies are detecting it. Let's look at this inward.
Okay.
If the external world is coded, and the weather is a rendering test, does this imply our internal thoughts are part of the same faulty software.
Well, this represents the most critical ethical threshold in the simulation hypothesis. The parallel observer explores this through the lens of cognitive health in a piece called The Recursive Mind.
Which gets into some heavy stuff.
It does. They look specifically at startups like Infrasim, which are actively pushing the boundaries of nested architecture.
Right.
What Infrasim is doing isn't just virtual reality. They're running substrate-independent neural algorithms. They're essentially bringing localized simulations within our simulation.
They are coding a consciousness inside a box.
And by doing so, they are inadvertently exposing the architecture of our own minds. This creates a recursion problem for bioethicists.
How so?
If human engineers can write a subroutine that possesses spontaneous thoughts, deeply held beliefs, and a genuine sense of self-awareness within a server, it forces the terrifying question: are we simply the same thing, one layer up?
Are your eureka moments actually spontaneous? Or are they just subroutines executing on schedule?
Exactly.
Okay, let's take that to its logical conclusion, because this has massive implications for every single person listening to this.
Oh, absolutely.
If startups like Infrasim are proving that nested realities are possible, and if my internal thoughts might just be pre-programmed subroutines, how can anyone be held legally or morally responsible for their actions? Like, if I'm just executing code, where is my free will?
You've just articulated the exact crisis currently paralyzing the legal system. And this is no longer a philosophical debate confined to university classrooms. It is actively being litigated.
Yeah, the sources dedicate a significant portion to the legal fallout of a recent Supreme Court decision, the Velasquez ruling.
Which was a landmark case for this exact issue.
Right, and for those who haven't followed the Velasquez case, the defense team attempted to use something called algorithmic immunity.
Yes.
They essentially argued that if human consciousness operates within a deterministic, coded framework, like if we are driven by systemic algorithms, then personal liability is a biological fiction. The defendant was just doing what the base code dictated.
And when you strip away the emotion and look purely at the data we've discussed, the deterministic sports finals, the thermodynamic anomalies, the nested neural architecture, the defense's argument is remarkably sound.
I mean, logically, it tracks.
If agency is an illusion, punishment is illogical. But the Supreme Court completely rejected algorithmic immunity.
They shut it down.
They did. And their reasoning reveals the sheer desperation of human institutions right now.
Because if they accept the defense, the entire social contract evaporates overnight.
Precisely. The Supreme Court isn't merely interpreting law anymore. They are desperately trying to maintain the illusion of reality.
Wow.
Rejecting algorithmic immunity is a survival mechanism for society. The justices are effectively legislating that we must act as if we possess free will, regardless of what the physical or computational evidence suggests.
Even if the architecture of our reality proves we are nested code.
Yes. The legal system has to enforce accountability. Otherwise, commerce, law, and social order instantly disintegrate. They are mandating the pretense of agency.
They are holding the line. They are looking at the glitching sky and saying, code or no code, you are responsible for your output.
That's a good way to put it.
Which is both terrifying and, honestly, strangely beautiful. But if the Supreme Court is forcing us to pretend we have free will just to keep society functioning, who is actually doing the manual labor of keeping the simulation from falling apart?
Well, someone has to be.
Right, someone has to be fixing these cracks when the energy deletes itself in Arizona.
As the system degrades, perceiving reality can no longer be a passive natural act. The default state of the Phoenix timeline is becoming fragmented and chaotic.
So it needs maintenance.
To maintain the cohesive narrative, intervention is required.
Which brings us to a new class of workers that the parallel observer calls source verifiers.
Yes, the verifiers.
I was reading the article titled The Last Line of Defense, Professionalizing Reality at the Crucible. And the concept is absolutely staggering. It details how humans are now being explicitly, rigorously trained to perceive reality correctly.
It goes back to quantum mechanics. Think about the classic thought experiment. A quantum waveform only collapses into a fixed physical state when it is observed.
Right. Schrödinger's cat and all that.
Exactly. For decades, observation was an automatic byproduct of being alive. You open your eyes, you look at a tree, the system renders the tree. But as the architecture runs out of memory, casual observation isn't enough to force the engine to render complex environments.
It's like needing a certified mechanic, but for existence itself.
That's entirely accurate.
The article describes this training center, the Crucible, where people learn cognitive locking. They are trained to sustain intense, unbroken observation on specific timelines or physical locations,
They are manually collapsing the quantum waveforms.
just to ensure the agreed-upon state of the world doesn't just buffer out of existence.
And that is why these source verifiers are suffering from severe reality fatigue.
I can't even imagine.
The cognitive load required to manually enforce the laws of physics with your own sustained perception for 8 or 12 hours a day is unfathomable. They are the human duct tape holding the simulation together.
Duct tape on the universe.
But human biology was not designed to carry the processing load of the universe. The verifiers are burning out, which means the unobserved cracks are getting wider.
And the sources mention several warning signs that we all need to be watching out for, right? Because if the verifiers fail, the system hits a critical threshold.
We are looking for sudden Pentagon and Navy lockdowns, massive unexplained fluctuating markets, and anomalous heat dome data.
So why those specific things?
These are the heavy variables. The global markets require enormous computational synchronization. A military lockdown drastically restricts human movement, essentially forcing millions of localized entities to stay in one place, which, computationally, reduces the need to render new environments.
It's a localized pause button.
Yes. When you see these events clustering together alongside extreme thermal anomalies, the system is attempting to free up memory on a massive scale.
Just dumping RAM.
The smog at the World Cup was a minor patch. These new warning signs indicate the architecture cannot hide its seams anymore.
The server is preparing for a hard crash.
Perhaps not a crash, but a fundamental transition. There is a profound silver lining in all of this data, actually.
I could use a silver lining right about now.
The very need for source verifiers, this professionalization of truth, it indicates that humanity is waking up. We are no longer just passive, observed code. By learning to perceive the glitches, by manually collapsing the waveforms and forcing the system to render, we are becoming active participants in the architecture of our own reality. We are evolving beyond the original parameters of the simulation.
I love that. Finding a wildly empowering take on the fabric of the universe falling apart.
It's the only logical conclusion.
It gives us our agency back, even if the Supreme Court had to mandate it first. So let's quickly recap this incredible journey for you. We started by looking at the 2026 World Cup, where record pollution acted as an occlusion-culling shroud, and mathematically perfect player statistics revealed a system bypassing the physics engine through a buffer load cycle.
From there, we examine localized environmental stress tests, Midwest superstorms anchoring over grid infrastructure, and Arizona homes violating thermodynamics by deleting energy.
Right.
Both of which trigger phantom stress, our biological hardware, detecting corrupted code before our conscious minds can process it.
Then we took that inward, exploring InfoSim's nested neural realities and the recursion problem that forced the Supreme Court to reject algorithmic immunity in the Velasquez ruling, desperately enforcing the illusion of human agency to prevent societal collapse.
Finally, we analyze the human cost of a failing system. The source verifiers, trained at the crucible to manually sustain physical reality through intense cognitive observation.
And suffering immense reality fatigue as they attempt to hold the timeline together. So moving forward, you must monitor the interconnected variables, market freezes, localized thermal anomalies, and sudden military lockdowns.
They are not isolated news stories. They are systemic memory management protocols.
Exactly. We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing the signs that the system is experiencing critical load. We know the Phoenix timeline is fraying at the edges. We know it desperately requires a massive memory update.
It's inevitable.
But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought today. Something to mull over on your commute or while you're making dinner tonight. We know a system update is inevitable to fix these cracks. But what actually happens to us, the nested code, when the system finally reboots? When the Phoenix timeline finishes installing its massive patch to fix the negative power and the anchored storms? Will we even remember that this glitchy version of reality existed?
That is the question.
Or will you just wake up tomorrow, pour your coffee, and go about your day entirely convinced that the world has always been completely, unquestionably flawless? Keep an eye on the sky. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.